Hey guys, tonight we journey into the heart of the Sahel, to the legendary Kingdom of Ghana. Not to be confused with modern Ghana, mind you, which is a bit further south. No, this is the older one, the ancient one, the empire built on gold and sweat and the groaning backs of camels. And tonight, you're not just reading about it, you're traveling there. You start your adventure in the soft blue light of early evening on the northern edge of the Sahara. The sand is still warm beneath your sandals, the air thick with dust and anticipation. In front of you, a caravan serai, a kind of medieval desert motel where the only amenities are water, straw, and the chance to not get eaten by jackals. It's buzzing in its own sleepy way. Traders squat on mats, sipping from goatskin flasks, their silhouettes soft against the flickering torchlight. Somewhere, a flute whistles a slow, slightly off-key tune. Camels snort in rhythm. You're here to join a caravan bound for the Kingdom of Ghana, not for sightseeing, though you might sneak in a few panoramic moments. No, you're here to witness the gold roads in action, to feel the weight of a salt slab on your back, to curse the way camel saddles seem deliberately engineered to crush your spine, and to wonder, as many before you have, if the human body was ever meant to walk this far just to buy spices. You've already made one poor decision. You wore leather shoes, rookie move, but there's no going back. You're registered, your gear is packed, and your camel, well, it just spat in your direction, so you're off to a great start. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Oh, and drop your city and local time in the comments. I love seeing where you're all listening from. Now, dim the lights, take a nice deep breath, maybe turn on the fans for that nice background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're handed a tiny tagine dish of something warm and spiced, possibly lentils, possibly sand. Either way you eat it, the caravan master, a wiry man with sun-leathered skin and a voice like gravel in a basket, gives you the rundown. Leave nothing behind. Drink only when told. Do not, under any circumstances, try to pet the camels. They will remember. This desert edge where Sahel meets Sahara is a liminal place. The wind carries stories from all directions. Berber traders from the north, Soninka soldiers from the south, Arab scribes from the east, and you, with your awkward gait and overstuffed satchel, are part of it now. Historians still argue whether this region had formal roads or just shifting paths marked by bones and rumors. But tonight, under a sliver moon, there's a path. You can feel it. A worn groove in the earth, an ancestral highway made by 1,000 hooves, padded feet, and salty footprints. As you lie down on your mat beside the camel pens, the sounds of the caravanserai lull you into something that resembles rest. Someone's snoring. Someone else is reciting a prayer, slow and rhythmic. The air cools gently like a silk scarf drawn across your face. Just as your eyelids begin to close, you hear a camel scream. It sounds like a bagpipe being run over by a cart. You bolt upright. Everyone else just groans and rolls over. First time, a voice whispers from the next mat. You nod. You'll get used to it, they murmur, or you'll go deaf. You settle back down, heart thumping a little slower now. The stars overhead blink lazily, like they've seen this all before, and they have. Empires have risen and fallen under their watch. Gold has flowed like rivers, and salt has bought kingdoms. You're just one more tired traveler trying to find a dream between breaths of sand. Somewhere out there, past the dunes and the danger, lies Kumbi Saleh, the twin city of the Ghanaian Empire, half Muslim, half royal, all gold. But for now, you're still on the edge. The wind kicks up a little, sifting the sand like flour. You turn your back to it, wrapping your scarf tighter. A nearby camel shifts its silhouette, towering and twitching. You try not to breathe too deeply. It smells like hot cabbage and regret. As you finally drift off, one thought loops softly through your mind. I probably won't survive this, but it's fine. Nobody ever died from too much gold dust, probably. Morning doesn't so much arrive as it ambushes you. The sky isn't even fully blue when the caravan stirs, like a restless beast, stretching, groaning, and grumbling. Someone throws water on a fire. Someone else throws something at a camel. The air smells like burnt grain and camel farts. Nothing says ready for adventure quite like that. And there, towering over you with the smugness of a beast who knows it's in charge, is your camel. Meet your noble steed. Well, noble is a stretch. She has a crooked tooth, an attitude problem, and a name you can't pronounce. So you mentally rename her Sheila. Sheila the Spiteful. Camels, you soon learn, are not here to make friends. They are here to endure. They tolerate you the way a bored cat tolerates a toddler's tea party. You climb aboard with the grace of a sack of wet laundry, legs flailing, turban slipping. Sheila makes a noise that can only be described as an indignant groan from the depths of 1,000 grudges, but she doesn't buck. That's something. Now you're moving. Slowly, camels don't gallop, they glide, sort of. It's a rolling, undulating two-hump rhythm that rocks you side to side, like a cradle designed by someone who's never seen a baby. The sun isn't even hot yet, and already your thighs are protesting. Your knees start composing a breakup letter. Still, you keep going. There's something strangely peaceful about the motion. Once you stop clenching every muscle in your body, you pass acacia trees, twisted like dancers, and flocks of birds flapping into the hazy distance. The path ahead is long, sure, but right now, you're hypnotized by the sway of it all. Camels in rows, packs tied with fraying rope, the jangle of bells, a distant hum of a caravan song, half lullaby, half survival chant. Here's your first real historical nugget. Camels didn't just revolutionize trade across North Africa, they made it possible. Before camels, the Sahara was like a cosmic do not enter sign. Horses couldn't survive. Donkeys gave up. But camels, they sauntered through like it was a sandy stroll, able to go a week without water, store fat in their humps, and shut their nostrils in sandstorms. Camels are basically bioengineered SUVs. Quirky tidbit, some traders would paint patterns on their camels using a mix of clay and indigo dye. Not for decoration, but supposedly to ward off thieves. It probably worked as well as those protected by magical wards signs people put on modern vending machines. Historians still argue whether camel saddles developed independently across regions or were passed down from older Arabian designs. Either way, they all share a common feature. They are deeply, profoundly uncomfortable. Think plank of wood meets roller coaster restraint. You now understand why no one writes love poems about camel rides. Still, without camels, the gold roads wouldn't exist. They're the link between the salt mines in the north and the gold fields of the south, between empires and oases, between whispered legends and sweaty reality. The caravan master calls for a rest break by a dried out wadi, a shallow riverbed now filled with dust and a few defiant shrubs. You dismount, barely, Legs wobbling, dignity already somewhere back at camp, Sheila promptly sits down with a thump, nearly squashing your water flask. You sip something bitter and warm, share dates with another traveler, and stretch beneath a scraggly tree that generously provides 3 inches of shade. The breeze, faint and dry, tickles the edge of your scarf. Then the camel next to you spits, you duck. It hits someone else. A debate ensues about whether this is a personal attack or just bad aim. The camel seems pleased with the chaos. Your caravan continues winding past occasional markers, stone piles, sun-bleached bones, broken pottery. Each tells a tale, some forgotten, some too grim to repeat before bedtime, but you notice them. You wonder briefly if someone years from now will find your flask half buried in the sand and try to guess what kind of idiot brought chocolate raisins to the desert. The horizon shimmers. Heat waves blur the distance, and in that haze, a mirage flickers. A lake, maybe? A palm tree? No, just more sand. Your brain, parched and sun-kissed, is starting to see things. A nearby trader chuckles and points at the shimmer. Lake of lies, he says in a gravelly voice. Always there, never real. You press onward, the caravan undulating like a sleepy centipede. Hours pass. You doze a little in the saddle, waking only when Sheila decides to yank her head violently sideways to nibble something thorny. You nearly lose a boot. Someone sings, someone coughs, someone snores on their camel. You're both impressed and slightly jealous. As evening creeps in again, the caravan halts beside a scattering of rocks known simply as the Teeth, jagged formations poking from the dunes like giant molars. Camp is set. Fires are lit. You collapse beside your baggage and contemplate the mystery of why camel breath always smells like pickled onions and betrayal. And still, despite the aches, the smells, and the utter disorientation of your internal compass, you feel it. That weird contentment of being part of something ancient, something vast. These roads, this rhythm, they've been here far longer than your exhaustion. You are a bead in a necklace, strung across centuries. As you drift toward sleep, Sheila snorts one last time, clearly unimpressed by your existence. You whisper, "Good night, you hairy menace." She closes her eyes first. Morning doesn't so much arrive as it ambushes you. The sky isn't even fully blue when the caravan stirs like a restless beast, stretching, groaning, and grumbling. Someone throws water on a fire. Someone else throws something at a camel. The air smells like burnt grain and camel farts. Nothing says ready for adventure quite like that. And there, towering over you with the smugness of a beast who knows it's in charge, is your camel. Meet your noble steed. Well, noble is a stretch. She has a crooked tooth, an attitude problem, and a name you can't pronounce. So you mentally rename her Sheila. Sheila the Spiteful. Camels, you soon learn, are not here to make friends. They are here to endure. They tolerate you the way a bored cat tolerates a toddler's tea party. You climb aboard with the grace of a sack of wet laundry, legs flailing, turban slipping. Sheila makes a noise that can only be described as an indignant groan from the depths of 1,000 grudges. But she doesn't buck. That's something. Now you're moving. Slowly. Camels don't gallop, they glide. Sort of. It's a rolling, undulating two-hump rhythm that rocks you side to side like a cradle designed by someone who's never seen a baby. The sun isn't even hot yet, and already your thighs are protesting. Your knees start composing a breakup letter. Still, you keep going. There's something strangely peaceful about the motion once you stop clenching every muscle in your body. You pass acacia trees, twisted like dancers, and flocks of birds flapping into the hazy distance. The path ahead is long, sure, but right now you're hypnotized by the sway of it all. Camels in rows, packs tied with fraying rope, the jingle of bells, a distant hum of a caravan song, half lullaby, half survival chant. Here's your first real historical nugget. Camels didn't just revolutionize trade across North Africa, they made it possible. Before camels, the Sahara was like a cosmic do not enter sign. Horses couldn't survive, donkeys gave up. But camels, they sauntered through like it was a sandy stroll, able to go a week without water, store fat in their humps, and shut their nostrils in sandstorms. Camels are basically bioengineered SUVs. Quirky tidbit: some traders would paint patterns on their camels using a mix of clay and indigo dye, not for decoration, but supposedly to ward off thieves. It probably worked as well as those protected by magical wards, signs people put on modern vending machines. Historians still argue whether camel saddles developed independently across regions or were passed down from older Arabian designs. Either way, they all share a common feature. They are deeply, profoundly uncomfortable. Think plank of wood meets roller coaster restraint. You now understand why no one writes love poems about camel rides. Still, without camels, the gold roads wouldn't exist. They're the link between the salt mines in the north and the gold fields of the south, between empires and oases, between whispered legends and sweaty reality. The caravan master calls for a rest break by a dried out wadi, a shallow riverbed now filled with dust and a few defiant shrubs. You dismount barely, legs wobbling, dignity already somewhere back at camp. Sheila promptly sits down with a thump, nearly squashing your water flask. You sip something bitter and warm, share dates with another traveler, and stretch beneath a scraggly tree that generously provides 3 inches of shade. The breeze, faint and dry, tickles the edge of your scarf. Then the camel next to you spits. You duck. It hits someone else. A debate ensues about whether this is a personal attack or just bad aim. The camel seems pleased with the chaos. Your caravan continues, winding past occasional markers, stone piles, sun-bleached bones, broken pottery. Each tells a tale, some forgotten, some too grim to repeat before bedtime. But you notice them. You wonder briefly if someone years from now will find your flask half buried in the sand and try to guess what kind of idiot brought chocolate raisins to the desert. The horizon shimmers. Heat waves blur the distance. And in that haze, a mirage flickers. A lake, maybe? A palm tree? No, just more sand. Your brain, parched and sun-kissed, is starting to see things. A nearby trader chuckles and points at the shimmer. Lake of lies, he says in a gravelly voice. Always there? Never real? You press onward, the caravan undulating like a sleepy centipede. Hours pass. You doze a little in the saddle, waking only when Sheila decides to yank her head violently sideways to nibble something thorny. You nearly lose a boot. Someone sings, someone coughs, someone snores on their camel. You're both impressed and slightly jealous. As evening creeps in, again, the caravan halts beside a scattering of rocks known simply as the Teeth, jagged formations poking from the dunes like giant molars. Camp is set. Fires are lit. You collapse beside your baggage and contemplate the mystery of. The day begins with silence. Not the peaceful kind, but the ominous pre-dawn kind where even the camels seem hesitant to start moving. You're up before the sun, shivering slightly despite the desert's reputation, and trying to rub feeling back into your arms. Sheila, of course, is already awake and chewing on something you're 70% sure was once your sandal strap. Today's the day you cross the open Sahara, the big stretch, the long haul, no villages, no palm groves, just sand, heat, and your own increasingly dramatic internal monologue. You adjust your scarf, double check your water skin, and climb onto Sheila like a pro. Well, like a pro who winces. The caravan lines up tighter than usual. No wandering, no gaps. The Sahara is not a place you want to get creative with directions. And then you're off. The sun rises, and it doesn't rise gracefully. It blasts into existence like a theater spotlight. Within an hour, your robe clings to your back. Your neck is steaming, and your lips feel like someone replaced them with old parchment. Welcome to the salt roads. They're not actual roads, of course, just paths remembered by camel drivers, marked by the occasional cairn or skeleton. No signs, no maps, just oral memory and the kind of instinct you absolutely do not have. The ground shifts constantly, one moment solid, the next soft and treacherous. You watch your camel's feet with obsessive concern, as though staring hard enough will keep you from sinking into oblivion. Spoiler, it doesn't. Here's your big historical reality check. Crossing the Sahara was never romantic. It was dangerous, soul-sucking, and often deadly. Caravans could be lost to sandstorms, dehydration, or simple navigation errors. Travelers carried wooden planks for shoveling out sand-buried animals, and sometimes people were left behind. If they couldn't walk, they couldn't stay. Brutal, yes, but necessary for survival. And yet, here you are, alive, sweating, glowing with the salt-crusted joy of shared suffering. Around midday, a wind picks up. Not a breeze, a wind. Fine sand starts swirling in the air, like the Sahara decided to season itself. You pull your scarf higher, narrowing your eyes. Visibility drops out, the world goes beige. The lead camel stops, then another. The whole caravan folds into a huddle, and you all crouch low, backs to the storm. Someone throws a blanket over Sheila. You duck under yours, clutching your water skin and trying not to think about how sand gets everywhere. Everywhere. Historians still argue whether travelers in these storms used coded whistles to stay together or just screamed creatively. Either way, it works. When the storm passes, 20 minutes later or 5 hours, who knows, the caravan is still intact. Shaken, gritty, but intact. The landscape has changed. Dunes have shifted. Cairns have vanished. But the caravan master doesn't look worried. He just points and says, "That way." You resume the march. Quieter now. The desert's made its point. By late afternoon, your throat feels like it's lined with salt crystals. You sip cautiously, only enough to wet your mouth. A fellow traveler explains, with dry humor, that people used to ration water by the number of sips they allowed per hour. Some just counted swallows, others just hoped. And here's a strange but true tidbit. Some caravans carried frogs or turtles, not as pets, but as moisture indicators. When the creatures got sluggish or buried themselves, it meant the air was drying dangerously. You consider befriending a turtle. Sheila seems offended by the idea. At last, you crest a dune and see it. The camp spot. Not much to look at, just a low plateau with a well dug years ago by a passing caravan and a half-dead tree stubbornly surviving in the dust. You dismount, stretch, try not to cry as your knees crack like old doors. Camp is subdued tonight. Everyone's tired. One man mutters that he saw a ghost walking beside the caravan. Another swears his camel whispered his name in the storm. Everyone laughs nervously. The stars come out one by one, clear, bright, cold. You lie back and watch them, imagining ancient traders doing the same night after night for centuries. Same sky, same aching backs, same dreams of gold waiting at the end of the road. And just as you're slipping into sleep, someone nearby groans, "Ugh, sand in my everything." You wake to gold. Not literal gold. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, but the light. That sunrise Sahara gold, washing over everything like it's been polished just for you. The dunes glow. The camels glow. Even Sheila, with her suspiciously damp nostrils and sand-crusted eyebrows, has a kind of reluctant majesty about her. But something's different today. There's an energy in the air. The caravan is moving quicker, spirits are lifted, and the traders whisper among themselves with a hum of anticipation. You ask around, and someone smiles, jerking a thumb to the south. "Ghana," they say simply. "We're nearly there." Your heart lifts a bit too, despite the sore muscles and lingering dust in places you'd rather not name. You mount Sheila, who seems to sense the change. Her stride is less grudging today, almost purposeful. Hours pass, the terrain shifts, fewer dunes now, more scrubland, more acacias and termite mounds, and flocks of guinea fowl darting away at your approach. You start seeing footprints again. Old ones, faded ones, but they're there. Trails of humanity trickling into something bigger. And then, in the soft shimmer of the horizon, you see it. Kumbi Saleh. Twin cities, that's what they call it. One side Muslim, the other royal. Two distinct personalities, pressed together like a mismatched couple who somehow make it work. The Muslim side greets you first. It's organized, clean, bustling. Mud brick houses line tidy lanes. You pass a mosque made of sun-dried earth and wooden beams, its prayer call humming gently through the air like a song caught in the throat of the morning. Arab scribes sit beneath awnings writing letters, contracts, and poetry. There's a quiet dignity here, a sense of knowledge moving in slow, careful lines, and then the royal side. You cross a boundary marked only by attitude. Everything is louder, brighter, smellier. Drums beat. People laugh in wide, easy circles. Children dart between carts, shouting in sonica and pulling at each other's tunics. Soldiers in embroidered cloaks stand watch, their spears tall and polished. They eye you, but only briefly. You're one of hundreds, maybe thousands. Caravans arrive daily, each one a fresh river of spice, salt, and stories. Kumisala smells like sweat and incense, like goat stew and shea butter, like power. You follow the caravan through a wide gate. No walls here. Ghana didn't believe in them. Instead, the king's authority is marked by space, by openness, a different kind of control. Historians still argue whether Kumbi Saleh had formal markets or whether it functioned more like a rolling street bazaar. You decide it doesn't matter. The whole city feels like a market. Barter is happening constantly, invisibly. Every handshake is a test, every smile is currency, but you're not here to shop, not yet. First, you must pass inspection. A line forms near a shaded pavilion. Officials in long robes step forward with calm but calculating eyes. One gestures to your camel, another waves your group forward. It's time to register, to pay the entry tax, to declare what you brought, and perhaps more importantly, what you intend to take. You pull out your small chest of trade goods, salt slabs, yes, but also dried fish, beads, a few strips of dyed cloth, and your secret weapon, a pouch of cinnamon bark, rare. Smells amazing. You hope it makes someone important sneeze with delight. The inspector nods, scribbles something with a stick of charcoal, then claps once. Permission granted. You're in. Now comes the welcome parade. A band of children runs up and throws what you hope is clean sand at your feet. It's a tradition, apparently. You sneeze, Sheila grunts, and one of the kids points at her and says something that makes the others laugh. You dismount and lead her to the animal quarters, a kind of chaotic barn with a perimeter trench filled with mud and herbs meant to keep insects at bay. You leave her with a groom and a mildly apologetic pat. You've made it. Here's a quirky nugget. Travelers say Ghanaian hosts often place sweet-smelling leaves under sleeping mats, both for comfort and as a gesture of hospitality. That night, when you're finally shown to your assigned mat in a communal guest house, you lift the edge, and sure enough, there they are. Crushed mint, dry lemongrass. It smells like someone is gently apologizing for the previous week of pure sand. You sit on the mat and breathe deeply. You made it through the Sahara. You're in Kombi Saleh. And tomorrow, you might see a king. For now, though, you lie back and watch the ceiling fan made of woven reeds spin slowly overhead. Outside, the city hums and bustles, but inside, in the soft twilight, you begin to drift. You wake to the sound of bells. Not the melodic kind you'd expect at a cathedral, but the clunky, slightly offbeat clatter of camel bells and iron anklets. Someone outside is grinding millet. Somewhere else, someone's arguing over fish prices in at least 2 different languages, but none of that matters. Today is Royal Court Day. You're told with great seriousness that if you want to see the King of Ghana, you must follow strict protocol. There's no barge of announcements or trumpet fanfare. There's just a long, slow walk through an open plaza with the sun in your eyes, guards at your sides, and a very real chance of getting scolded if you speak at the wrong moment. You join a group of merchants and ambassadors gathering outside the king's compound. They're dressed in long, flowing robes dyed in blues, reds, and golds. Some wear strings of cowries. Others have embroidered slippers, so fine you suspect they've never walked further than the royal gate. You, on the other hand, are wearing what could generously be called desert chic, which is a polite way of saying your tunic smells like camel and regret. But no one seems to care. Everyone's sweating anyway, and then you wait. An hour, maybe 2. The sun rises higher. The plaza fills. People murmur, shift, dab at their foreheads. A few try not to fall asleep where they stand. A small boy starts snoring. It's all part of the ritual. Finally, with no trumpet, no speech, just the silence that follows a change in the wind, the king appears. He doesn't walk. He's presented, seated cross-legged under a wide canopy, draped in shimmering robes of woven silk, gold jewelry heavy on his arms and neck. His face is calm, unreadable. The air around him seems cooler somehow, like even the heat doesn't dare mess with royalty. And here's the thing, he doesn't speak to you. Instead, he speaks through spokesmen, intermediaries. The system is strict. A message is whispered to the interpreter, who tells the spokesman, who finally speaks aloud to the king. The king replies in reverse. It's slow, deliberate, almost like a ceremony in itself. You shift your weight, trying not to let your knees buckle. Historians still argue whether this system was purely ceremonial or if the king actually preferred not to speak to foreigners. Some say it added to the mystique of power. Others believe it was simply a logistical solution in a multilingual empire. But the result is clear. When the king acknowledges you, even indirectly, it feels monumental. You notice his court is huge, not just nobles and guards, but musicians, dancers, advisors, astrologers. Some carry fly whisks, others fan the air. There's even a man whose only job appears to be guarding a sacred drum. Its surface etched with old scars and tied with charms made of feathers and copper beads. Quirky detail, the king is flanked by dogs, big ones, fierce-looking, with collars of gold and silver. Some say these dogs are enchanted, able to sniff out lies or see the truth of your heart. You don't test that theory, you just bow very, very respectfully. Then come the gifts. Each visitor steps forward with an offering: salt, textiles, incense, copper, and sometimes themselves. Not as slaves, but as emissaries or servants seeking to live under the king's protection. You offer a pouch of your cinnamon bark. It's accepted with a nod. No one claps, but someone near you whispers, "That's a good sign." And just like that, it's over. The king retreats. The drums thump softly. The crowd disperses like mist. You stand there for a moment, blinking at the sun, unsure if it really happened. Did you just meet the most powerful man in West Africa? Or was it all some golden mirage brought on by heat stroke and bad lentils? Either way, you survived it. You didn't faint. You didn't insult anyone. You kept your sandals on straight. Success. Later, over a bowl of stew that tastes like goat peanuts and mild confusion, a fellow traveler tells you something odd. On Tuesdays, he says, the king wears nothing but gold. Only gold. Even his drumsticks are gold. You raise an eyebrow. He nods seriously. But only on Tuesdays. On Thursdays, he fasts and listens to bird songs instead. You're not sure if he's joking. You're not sure he's sure if he's joking. But it doesn't matter. That's Ghana. A place where kings shimmer, dogs wear jewelry, and silence says more than words ever could. As night falls, the city buzzes with gossip from the court. Who bowed too low, who forgot their gift, who sneezed during the drumming and had to pretend it was intentional. You fall asleep to the beat of distant tam-tams and the image of a king wrapped in gold, glimmering under the sun like he is the sun. By now, your legs have fully surrendered to their new camel-dependent lifestyle. Your taste buds have accepted that most meals will involve at least one questionable stew, and you've developed a sixth sense for dodging donkey carts in crowded streets. But today isn't about camels or kings or even stew. Today is trade day. This is what the journey was for. All that sand in your socks, the sunburn on your ears, it was leading up to this moment where you finally get to sell your goods and maybe, just maybe, get a little gold in return. If that is, you don't mess it up. See, in Ghana, trade with outsiders wasn't just business. It was ceremony. Controlled, calculated, and occasionally hilariously awkward. Here's how it works. You don't talk to your buyer. That would be far too simple. Instead, you go to the appointed trading site, usually a sandy open space outside the capital, and quietly lay out your goods. Salt slabs, dried fish, beads, your weird cinnamon bark that still smells amazing despite the trauma. Then you walk away. You read that right. You leave your stuff right there, out in the open. No bargaining, no dramatic haggling. Just walk away and wait. Sometime later, minutes, hours, who knows, a local official arrives. He inspects your goods, he considers your vibe, then he leaves something next to your pile. Gold dust usually, wrapped in a leaf or small cloth. Then he walks away. Now it's your move. You return to the site, inspect the offer, and decide if you accept it. If you do, you take the gold and go. If not, you leave it, and the official has a chance to sweeten the deal or not. It's the quietest, slowest, most passive-aggressive bartering system ever devised, and it's brilliant. Historians still argue whether this method was developed for religious reasons, perhaps to avoid impure contact between Muslim and non-Muslim traders, or whether it was simply a very dignified way of keeping everyone from yelling. Either way, it works. You try your hand at it. You lay out your goods with care. A little salt, a few beads, one especially smooth piece of indigo-dyed cloth. You back away. You wait and wait. Someone nearby sneezes. A camel chews something thoughtfully. A kid draws a rude gesture in the sand. You resist the urge to peek. Finally, the official returns. He inspects your goods, frowns slightly at your cloth, and places a modest packet of gold dust beside it. You approach. The gold is, okay, not thrilling, not insulting. You hem and haw internally for far longer than necessary before deciding to leave it there. Power move. An hour later, the gold is slightly larger. You grin, take it, and walk away like you just pulled off the most respectful heist in history. Nearby, a fellow merchant is not having as much luck. He keeps leaving and returning, fuming silently as the gold offer remains pathetically tiny. You hear him mutter about cowrie shell inflation and these kids today with their stingy negotiations. And speaking of cowries, quirky trade tip, not everything in Ghana was paid for in gold. Cowrie shells, imported all the way from the Indian Ocean, were a major form of currency, especially for smaller purchases. Lightweight, durable, and annoyingly easy to drop in the sand. At one stall in the city, you buy a carved horn ornament for a handful of cowries, only to realize later that half of them were counterfeit. Someone had hand-painted bits of shell to look like the real thing. You're mildly furious, but also deeply impressed. Trade here is more than economics. It's storytelling. Every item tells a tale. Where it came from, who touched it, how far it traveled. A single bead might have passed through 3 empires and 5 hands before reaching you. And then there's the gossip. Markets in Kumbi Saleh aren't just for commerce, they're for news. A Berber trader from the north tells of a new sultan rising in Marrakesh. A Songhai emissary whispers that their king is building boats, not for the river, but for battle. A local woman selling cola nuts tells you that her cousin swears the king has a talking bird who recites proverbs in Arabic and Soninka. You nod, fascinated, not because you believe it, but because here, that hardly matters. The story is worth more than the truth. As the sun begins to set, the market glows. Literally, the red dust in the air catches the fading light, painting everything gold. And for a fleeting moment, the whole city seems to shimmer. You jingle your little pouch of gold dust, not enough to retire on, maybe enough to get better sandals. Still, you feel rich. And just as you're about to leave, you overhear a whisper from a nearby stall. The king's advisors are watching the markets again. Something big's coming. You don't know what, but the air does feel heavier somehow, like a drum roll waiting to drop. You brush the dust off your robe, look one last time at the piles of salt beads and grain, And then you walk back through the torch-lit streets, hoping that tomorrow brings more stories than surprises. You wake with the faint suspicion that someone's stolen your water skin. Turns out you just rolled onto it in the night, and now it's shaped like a very disappointed pancake. At least it didn't burst. Today, your goal is simple. Survive the money game. You're back in the city where markets hum and chickens scream existentially from under baskets. But this time, you're not just wandering. You're learning the unspoken rules of trade currency. And let's just say Ghana has a system. You make your way to a busy stall lined with baskets of gold dust, cowrie shells, iron tools, glass beads, and cola nuts. Someone's using cola nuts as currency. You're either horrified or extremely intrigued. Ghana, as you're quickly discovering, runs on gold dust, but not in neat little coins or shiny nuggets. No, they carry it loose, stored in tiny pouches or even in hollowed out feathers. And when it comes time to pay, people pull out tiny wooden spoons or carefully calibrated scales to measure exact amounts. You watch a boy buy a jar of honey by sprinkling dust onto a carved tray. The merchant frowns, adds a grain back to the pile, then nods. That single speck of gold? Probably enough to buy a handful of dates, or at least a very stern look from a banker. Historians still argue whether there was a standardized gold weight system in place, or if traders operated on mutual trust or mutually assured frustration. Some claim elaborate weights shaped like fish or birds were used. Others insist it was all about the spoon. In your case, you have neither. You make do with a seashell and a confident expression. But here's where it gets trickier. Cowrie shells. Imported from far off coasts, cowries function as small change in Ghana. But not all cowries are created equal. Some are cracked, some are counterfeit, some have been filled with pebbles to make them rattle like they're worth more, and no one explains this to you. You try to buy a small pouch of spices from a woman who looks at your cowries like you've offered her wet breadcrumbs. She snorts, points to the pile, and mutters something about child money. You leave humbled and slightly sweaty. Next up, trade tokens. These are rare carved items passed between trusted merchants as symbols of existing relationships. You're shown one, a small wooden piece shaped like a lizard with geometric carvings. This, the trader says, lets me buy salt at half price in Tahaza. You blink. It's like a loyalty card, but cooler and much more intimidating. You want one, desperately. You do not qualify. A fellow merchant from the Maghreb leans over and offers some advice. In Ghana, if someone gives you a bad deal, don't argue. Just smile, wait, and find their cousin. You're not sure if that's business wisdom or a threat, but either way, it checks out. Quirky anecdote time. You hear about a traveler who once tried to use glass marbles as currency, thinking he could trick the locals with shiny things. The result? He accidentally sparked a fashion trend, and now marbles are worn on neck cords by preteens with too much attitude. There's also the matter of credit. Yes, credit. Certain merchants have such good reputations they can buy now and pay later, with the understanding that their family, clan, or guild will settle the debt. You try asking if you can do that, and the merchant laughs so hard he nearly drops a jar of honey. It's fine. You didn't want credit anyway. You're here to learn. You take your freshly gathered knowledge and return to the market with a new strategy. You avoid the currency traps, weigh your gold dust on a borrowed spoon after carefully checking it for sabotage, and manage to score a small bundle of dried fish without getting sneered at. Victory. You even attempt a little flair, pouring just enough gold into a trader's palm to suggest confidence, but not so much it screams naive foreigner. They nod appreciatively. You feel like a legend, but Ghana always keeps you humble. Just as you're starting to think you've got this trade economy figured out, a boy sprints past, slaps the pouch off your belt, and disappears into the crowd. You lurch forward, only to realize seconds later that it wasn't your real pouch. It was the decoy, one full of worthless pebbles and a beetle carcass you accidentally collected earlier. The thief got played. You grin. There's a rhythm to this place, a logic. You just have to learn how to dance with it and know when to fake a limp. As the sun sets over Kumbi Saleh, casting the market in a soft, honeyed glow, you sit under a canopy with a group of merchants. They share a handful of roasted locusts, some spicy tea, and gossip about whose cowrie stash got soaked in the rain last week and now smells like snail soup. You laugh, because you're not the fool anymore. Well, maybe just a little, but now you're their fool. You're starting to understand the rhythm of this place, not just its trade and rituals, but its noise. Ghana's markets don't buzz in the usual way. They clash, rattle, and chatter like a dozen stories being told at once, each one determined to be louder and more interesting than the last. Today, you're not a buyer or seller. Today, you're a lurker, soaking in the symphony of chaos and Berber gossip echoing through Kumbi Saleh's open-air stalls. The market square is enormous, stretching like a woven blanket of smells, voices, animals, and deals. There's no central grid, no produce section, just layers of organized madness. Meat hangs beside beads, textiles flap next to dried fruit, and in between, people. So many people. Traders, musicians, street performers, scribes for hire, potion sellers, fortune tellers, and kids selling lizards in clay pots because apparently that's a thing. You dodge a goat that's extremely confident in its right of way. It bleats judgmentally. You pass a Berber merchant perched on a woven mat wrapped in indigo cloth so deep it stains his fingertips. He's telling a story, something about a camel that refused to kneel until it was bribed with fig paste. Half the crowd laughs. The other half nods solemnly, as if that story just unlocked a deeper truth about camel psychology. Berber traders are everywhere here. They're the lifeblood of trans-Saharan commerce, coming from cities like Sijil Massa or Ouagadougou, riding deep desert routes with salt, dates, books, and yes, gossip. So much gossip. You hear murmurs about a tax increase on foreign cloth, a Songhai noble caught overpaying for ivory combs, a Tuareg caravan robbed 2 weeks ago near a dry well by a band of desert raiders who politely apologized afterward. Historians still debate just how much of Ghana's power relied on trade alliances with Berbers. Some argue they were essential middlemen who helped link the empire to North African ports and Mediterranean markets. Others suggest the Berbers were just one of many gears in a much more complex machine. One thing's clear: you don't cross a Berber merchant. Their memory is long, their patience is thin, and their stories travel faster than a sandstorm. Quirky market feature? There's an entire aisle, if you can call it that, dedicated to charms and solutions. Bottles filled with crushed blue stones, carved gourds, bracelets made from crocodile teeth, and even one vendor selling something labeled rain in a jar. It's just sand and hope. You linger at a stall selling ink and parchment. The scribe is explaining how the ink was made from boiled berries and charcoal soot, with a whisper of goat bile for lasting bite. You make a mental note to never chew on old manuscripts. Kids run past with slingshot mangoes. A woman yells at her cousin in 3 different languages, none of them gentle. A man with a parrot on his shoulder tries to sell you a travel blessing for 1 gold flake. The parrot nods enthusiastically. You politely decline. You stop near a storyteller, an older woman with skin like worn leather and a voice like poured honey. She's spinning a tale about a Ghanaian prince who once challenged a crocodile to a riddle contest. The prize? A wife. Or maybe a boat. No one can agree. It's mesmerizing. The way she paints each image, pausing at just the right beat, letting silence do half the work. She ends the tale with a wink and a dramatic cough. People toss coins, cowries, and a single roasted yam into her bowl. And then there's the sound of the drums. It starts subtle, soft thumps that ripple through the market like a second heartbeat. Then flutes join in and rattles, and the occasional joyful shout. A dancer appears, barefoot, spinning with gold painted arms and bells on her ankles. People stop, watch, clap. Some toss gift, some just close their eyes and listen. And you? You're part of it now. Not a tourist? Not quite. You've been burned, tricked, accepted, and tolerated. You've bought fish that was only slightly expired. You've learned which tea to drink and which will put you in a philosophical coma. You sit near a stack of woven mats, share roasted groundnuts with a Malian spice trader, and try to guess the flavor of something bubbling in a nearby pot. Hint. It's peanut, with a 12% chance of goat. As the sun tilts west, the market begins to slow. Traders count their earnings. Musicians switch to gentler songs. The air cools just enough to make your robe stop clinging to your spine. Someone passes you a honey pastry. You don't know their name. You say thank you. They nod. That's enough. This city, this world, it's not just about gold, it's about flow. The flow of goods, of people, of language, of laughter, and even lies. Every corner you turn has a new story to hear or to dodge, and somehow they all stick to you like dust on your boots. And tomorrow, you'll follow where the gold flows next. But tonight, you let the market's echoes carry you gently back to your mat, where your pouch of coins jingles faintly and the scent of fried millet cakes trails after you like a lullaby. You wake to the soft creak of rope being tightened and the clatter of packs being loaded. Sheila, in an act of pure dramatic timing, lets out a groan loud enough to wake the spirits of a nearby tamarind tree. She knows. Today, the caravan leaves Kumbi Saleh. And this time, you're helping transport gold. Not your gold, of course. Don't be silly. That little pouch you earned wouldn't buy half a song from the court's drummer boy. But the real gold, the glittering, powdered kind, being measured by spoonfuls and bound for the north, that's what you'll be guarding, packing, and probably stressing over every step of the way. It's an honor and a test. You meet the northbound caravan outside the city gates. The group's larger now, nearly doubled in size. Extra guards, more camels, a few wide-eyed newcomers who haven't yet been spit on. You nod sympathetically. Your job is simple. Help oversee a pack animal carrying sealed leather pouches of gold dust, each marked with symbols that indicate its source, owner, and destination. Some are headed to Sijil Masa, others to Tunis, and a few maybe even as far as Baghdad. That's the part that blows your sleep-deprived mind. This glittering powder that once lined the riverbanks of Bambuk or Bure will soon flow into the veins of entire cities across the known world. It'll fund mosques, palaces, poetry, and bribes. It might buy silks in Aleppo, glass beads in Cairo, or a rare manuscript written in Kufic script. This isn't just gold, it's gravity. You tighten the leather straps, double check the saddle rig. Sheila eyes you suspiciously. You explain gently that if she drops this gold, you're both going to end up as camel stew. And so the return leg begins. The route back north mirrors your incoming journey, but everything feels different, heavier, quieter. The traders joke less. The guards scan the horizon more. There's tension in the air, not fear exactly, but awareness. Because here's the truth no one says aloud: gold attracts more than wealth, it attracts thieves. Historians still argue whether Ghana employed formal patrols to protect its traders, or if the protection came more from sheer scale and reputation. Some sources suggest alliances with desert tribes to guard key waypoints. Others mention elaborate decoy caravans used to confuse raiders. Whatever the case, you're watching every ridge now, every outcrop. Your eyes flick toward distant shapes and shimmering dunes that might be trees, or tents, or trouble. One night, you camp near a grove where the wind whispers through acacia trees like it's trying to tell you someone's listening. A guard swears he saw shadows moving. Another says it was just jackals. Either way, no one sleeps well, and yet the journey continues. By day, the desert stretches before you like an endless parchment, unrolling secrets with every step. You share canteens, you whisper updates, you hum quiet songs. One trader teaches you a desert walking chant, slow, syllabic, hypnotic. It helps pass the time and keep your pace. The gold never leaves your sight. You find yourself checking the pouches compulsively, even though they haven't moved. It's not paranoia, it's protocol. And maybe a little paranoia, quirky tidbit. To prevent theft or accidental tampering, some caravans used to tie small bells to their gold pouches. If the camels shifted too suddenly, or if someone tried to cut a strap in the night, jingle. Alarm. Chaos. A low-tech but surprisingly effective security system. Another day, another mirage. You think you see water again? Everyone does. Even the camels pick up the pace, only to be disappointed by yet another stretch of dry stone and trickster air. The merchant next to you sighs and says, "The desert is honest, just not right now." Your beard itches, your robe is stiff with salt, your sandals might actually be crying, and still, you keep going, because this is the lifeblood of Ghana. Not gold itself, but the movement of gold. The trust, the systems, the shared risk, and the whispered stories. Every grain of dust in your pack is part of something larger, older, deeper than you can explain. You feel it in your bones, in your sweat, in your camel-induced sciatica. You stop at a halfway point, a rock shelter etched with symbols. Traders have carved their names here for generations, leaving marks to say, "I came through. I endured. I mattered." You pull out a dull shard of bone and scratch a mark. Nothing fancy, just a line and a loop. A secret code between you and the desert. One of the Berber guards sees you and nods. "Now you're part of the road," he says. At camp that night, someone brings out a drum. Another person has a stringed instrument made of gourds and twine. They play a rhythm that isn't a song so much as a heartbeat. And you, sitting under a sky full of stars, and the weight of a dozen silent gold pouches beside you, let yourself breathe. Just for a moment. You haven't reached home yet, but you're on the path. And that's something. Night falls harder out here. Not just darker, heavier. like a blanket soaked in ink wrapped around your caravan as you huddle by a fire that doesn't crackle so much as wheeze. You sit close to the glow, the stars above, sharp and endless, like pinholes poked into some divine curtain. Tonight, you're camped beside a low sandstone ridge, a natural windbreak used by traders for generations. You can still see soot stains from past fires on the rock. Someone's carved a crude camel with crossed eyes into the wall. You suspect Sheila's reputation precedes her. The gold is stacked neatly near the center of camp, guarded by a semicircle of sleeping forms and one extremely alert dog who's been trained to growl at everything, including fallen leaves. Dinner is millet porridge again and roasted desert squash that tastes better than it looks. You eat slowly, watching the others. Some talk in low tones, some just sit, staring into the flames like the fire is whispering secrets. And then someone starts to sing, not loudly, just a low rhythmic hum that picks up slowly, like the desert itself is clearing its throat. Others join in. You feel it before you understand it. The rhythm isn't random, it's choreographed. These are journey songs, call and response ballads sung by caravanners to pass the miles, warn of dangers, or, tonight, to keep the shadows at bay. The melody is simple. The words in Soninka, Tamazight, and Arabic blending into one sleepy thread. You don't know what they mean, but you hum along anyway. Quirky note: some traders believed these songs carried protective power. That singing together kept the camp safe from desert spirits, or at least helped camels sleep better. You glance at Sheila, who is already lying down and chewing cud like the world is exactly as it should be. Then it hits: a sandstorm. Not the theatrical tornado style ones from adventure movies. This one creeps in like a thief. First a breeze, then a hiss, then a slow grinding of the air itself. Within minutes, the stars disappear. The fire dims. And the sound. It's like a thousand hands dragging silk across stone. The entire camp jumps into motion. You follow instinct, or maybe just everyone else. You tie a scarf tight across your mouth, shove your head beneath a wool blanket, and crouch beside your pack as the wind begins to scream. Sand needles into your skin. The tent canvas snaps like it's angry. The fire guttered out 2 minutes ago. All you hear is wind. All you feel is grit. It's everywhere, in your ears, your teeth, your thoughts. Historians still argue whether travelers used coded tapping to communicate in storms or just memorize each other's breathing patterns. Tonight, you're relying on touch. Someone grips your shoulder. You grip theirs. Together, you ride it out. 15 minutes, or maybe 40. Time does weird things inside a sandstorm. Then, just as suddenly, it fades. The air clears. The moon blinks back into view. The stars return, wide-eyed and innocent. You emerge, blinking, covered in sand. You look like a cinnamon-dusted statue. Around you, others rise slowly, shaking off the night's wrath. Sheila, of course, is unbothered. She just stands, yawns loudly, and immediately urinates in the exact center of camp. Classic. The camp resets, fires are relit, people murmur, laugh nervously. Someone plays a single note on a flute just to test if the world still works. It does. You crawl back into your blanket. Your muscles ache. Your face feels scrubbed. But there's a peace now. A silence not empty but earned. And then, as if summoned by memory, the stories begin. Around the new fire, someone tells of a man who crossed the desert with a pack of honey, only to have it melt and soak every scroll he owned. Another speaks of a night when the stars blinked in code warning a caravan to change course or perish. You're not sure if these stories are true, but tonight, truth feels less important than the telling. You share your own tale about the boy who stole your decoy pouch in Kumbi Saleh. People laugh. One trader offers to buy the story with a clove stuffed date. You accept. Out here, stories are currency too. You drift to sleep with your back to the wind and your dreams filled with humming songs, drifting sands, and the soft weight of gold dust resting somewhere just beyond your reach. Dawn is slower after a sandstorm. You wake with your mouth dry and your blanket full of sand, your limbs stiff like you've been politely mummified in the night. Sheila snorts a mouthful of grit at you as a greeting. Your response is something between a groan and a vow of revenge. She seems satisfied. Today, the caravan is quieter, not somber, just focused. Everyone checks their gear more carefully. They retighten the leather straps on the gold packs. There's less joking, more squinting at the horizon, because now the rumors begin. A new traveler joins your group at the last rest stop, a wiry man on a lean camel with eyes like someone who's survived more than one wrong turn. He carries no gold, just news. Raids in the northeast, he says simply as he chews on a sprig of dry thyme. Not near us yet. You look around. No panic, just more checking of spears. A bit more tension in the shoulders. Even the animals seem quieter, their usual complaining muted by some shared understanding. Ghana may have been wealthy, but that wealth brought envy. Always had, always would. And it wasn't as just raiders. Ghana had rivals. Historians still argue the exact moment things began to fray. Some say droughts weakened the empire's core. Others point to the rise of new trade centers like Aldegost and Gao. Some claim internal fractures between the Muslim merchant class and the traditional Soninka elite sowed unrest. And others, of course, blame Morocco. Always a safe bet. But here in the caravan, you hear the rumors in real time. Not academic debates, whispers. A merchant from the Sahel claims Mali is growing fast, absorbing villages, spreading new coinage, hoarding salt. Another says a Songhai envoy passed through the northern border asking way too many questions about Ghana's gold routes. You hear about silent scouts spotted near the river bend counting camels, sketching maps. Even among your group, you sense the tension. Some traders tighten their circle, speaking only in whispers. At night, one group refuses to share firewood. Another suddenly insists on splitting off tomorrow, claiming they know a faster way. The gold is safe for now, but no one's taking chances. The straps get tied tighter. The packs are stacked under watchful eyes. And that dog? It's suddenly everyone's best friend. Quirky defense strategy? One veteran trader tells you Ghana once trained horned cattle to charge at specific drum beats, used as living battering rams to repel desert raiders. You're skeptical. Then you remember the King's Guard dogs with gold collars. Anything's possible. At a rest stop, you find a small stone monument tucked into the side of a dune. It's painted with red ochre and marked with the symbols of three empires, Ghana, Mali, and something unfamiliar. Someone's left beads at its base. You do the same. Empires don't always fall with a bang. Sometimes they erode, grain by grain. One trade route rerouted, one ally lost, one caravan hijacked and never replaced, but still, Ghana endures. For now, as the sun dips low, casting long shadows across the trail, you find yourself walking beside a griot, a wandering storyteller with an ankle bell and a voice that could lull thunder to sleep. She tells you a tale, half whispered, of a king who swallowed gold dust every morning to keep his blood noble. It worked until it didn't. She smiles when she finishes and says, "Even kings forget that gold does not love." The wind picks up again. Just a breeze this time, nothing sinister, but it carries a chill that wasn't there yesterday. Back at camp, the usual chatter feels thinner. Laughter still comes, but it's edged with caution. You eat a small bowl of stew in silence. You check your saddle one more time before bed. You count the gold packs twice. No one says it, but everyone feels it. Ghana's shine is still blinding, but somewhere out there, someone is sharpening their shadow. You lie awake for a long while, staring up at the moon, half wrapped in your cloak. It's a strange thing realizing you're part of a history still being written. You wonder who's watching you from the dunes taking notes, and whether they'll sing your story when all this is over. The next morning arrives wrapped in stillness. Not the peaceful kind, the weird kind, the kind that makes everyone look up at the sky a few extra seconds like they're expecting it to blink. You chew a hunk of dried fig and sip warm water that tastes suspiciously like goat skin, watching your caravan prepare for what should be an ordinary travel day. But the mood's off. Even Sheila, usually prone to making a dramatic scene before standing, rises without a fuss. You do not trust this energy at all. A Berber merchant mutters, "Too quiet," then walks away shaking his head. Great. You sail off into open scrubland, sparse and dry. The ground hard as hammered bronze beneath your camel's feet. The terrain should be easy, but no one's relaxed. The guards scan the ridges with the same focus usually reserved for gold pouches and fire-cooked millet. Midway through the morning, it happens. Sheila stops, just stops, plants all 4 feet, and refuses to move. You sigh, lean forward, and mutter something motivational. Sheila answers by twisting her neck 180 degrees and staring at you, like you just insulted her ancestors. Then she sits, hard. Your spine vibrates. Somewhere behind you, someone chuckles. You do not appreciate their enthusiasm. It takes 15 minutes, a generous bribe of dates, and 3 other traders to get Sheila moving again. She leaves with a disgusted snort and the proud gait of someone who has won whatever battle she thinks just happened. Quirky camel behavior? There's an old belief among Sahelian traders that camels remember faces and grudges for up to 10 years. One tale claims a camel followed a man across 3 towns to knock over his tent in revenge. You don't know if that's true, but you do know Sheila has memorized your scent and your spirit. Later that day, your caravan encounters a fork in the road. Not a metaphorical one, a real one, with a weather-worn post made of carved acacia wood pointing 2 ways. One route leads toward a familiar resting place, safer, slower, already past, on the journey south. The other, a shortcut, narrower, riskier, less patrolled, but faster. There's a long pause. The leaders gather, whispers, side glances, then the vote is made. You're taking the shortcut. Fewer raiders there, someone says. Fewer witnesses too, someone else replies under their breath. But it's too late. The path is chosen. As the caravan snakes through a dry canyon, walls of ochre stone rising on either side, you start imagining just how many terrible things could happen in such a conveniently enclosed space. Ambush, flood, very organized goats. Nothing happens, not right away. Then a sound, faint, rhythmic. Hooves, not yours, not close. The caravan halts. Everyone goes still. Even the camels stop chewing. One of the guards signals. Everyone slowly edges their animals toward the canyon wall. You press against Sheila's side, trying not to think about what her reaction might be if startled. Answer: catastrophic. And then, a small group of riders crests the ridge. Not many, 5, maybe 6, faces wrapped in cloth, weapons visible but not drawn. They pause, stare. One raises a hand. The tension hums like a stretched bowstring. Then the caravan leader raises his hand in reply. A subtle nod follows. The strangers vanish over the ridge, just gone. Everyone exhales. Historians still argue whether Ghana's trade routes were protected by formal alliances with desert tribes who might have been raiders, guides, or both. Some scholars believe protection payments were simply bribes with nicer branding. Whatever the case, today, your gold remains untouched. That night, camp is quiet again, but different. Not fearful, more like respectful of the desert, of chance, of the fact that sometimes staying safe is about moving with confidence and not looking like you're worth robbing. You find a spot near the fire and rub your aching back. Sheila lies nearby, curled like a giant furry comma of contempt. You sip from a shared gourd of fermented milk that tastes like confusion and chalk. It burns slightly in a good way. Someone tells a story of a trader who faked a cursed camel to ward off thieves. Apparently, the camel played along. The thieves fled. The camel got extra figs. You glance at Sheila. Don't get any ideas. She sneezes. You wrap yourself in your blanket and let the fire's glow wash over your eyelids. The wind whistles gently through the rocks. Not a scream this time. More like a lullaby, a soft, dry hush saying, "Not today." And that's enough. The land begins to change again. Bit by bit, the dunes flatten. The scrub grows thicker. Small trees appear, stubbornly surviving. Where weeks ago there was nothing but dust and the occasional judgmental lizard. You feel it before you see it. You're approaching the edge of the desert, the northern border of Ghana's golden domain, and with it comes a strange feeling in your bones, not quite relief, not quite nostalgia, just weight. Like everything you've seen, carried, and felt is suddenly settling inside you. Today, your legs ache differently, not with exhaustion, but with anticipation. It's the final stretch, and it feels final. The caravan moves steadily, slower than usual, as if everyone's dragging out the last pages of a story they're not ready to finish. You pass familiar landmarks now, a split baobab tree with initials scratched into its bark, a stone slab where travelers leave offerings, a feather here, a bead there, one wilted onion. Sentimental or just forgotten? Unclear. You and Sheila have developed a truce. She no longer tries to throw you off with sudden sidesteps, and you've stopped muttering curses about camel stew under your breath. You even catch yourself talking to her sometimes, asking if she's tired, telling her you're proud. She responds with grunts and side eyes. You think she means same. Around midday, the caravan stops for lunch beneath a rare thicket of trees. Everyone spreads out, eating quietly, watching the horizon. The gold is unpacked for final inspection. Still sealed, still untouched. You help count it out, pouch by pouch, each one a small sun wrapped in leather. It's hard not to feel something. Not pride, exactly. Something quieter, like you've been entrusted with a secret and you kept it safe. You catch yourself brushing sand from your robe the way the Ghanaian guards did, precise and almost ritualistic. You've picked up habits you didn't even notice. That thought alone feels heavier than your pack. You share roasted yams with a Songhai trader who once rode all the way to Cyrenaica and back. He shows you a scar on his leg shaped like a crescent. Camel bite, he says. I deserved it. You laugh. You don't ask for details. Historians still debate the size of Ghana's true northern influence, whether it extended into Sigil Masa's markets or stopped shy of the Atlas foothills. You wonder if borders ever really mattered here. The gold passed through. The stories passed further. As you remount, someone calls from behind. A teenage boy runs up, arms flailing. You recognize him, one of the younger traders who got sick the second night out and stayed behind. Now he's returned, carrying a leather pouch tied in twine. For you, he says breathlessly. You open it. Inside, a carved bead, a strip of indigo cloth, and a single cowrie shell with a crack down the middle. From Kumbi Saleh, he adds, for the road ahead. You try to hand it back. He shakes his head. You'll need it more. You stow the pouch in your satchel, unsure what to say. Some gifts aren't meant to be explained. As the afternoon wears on, the wind carries something new. The scent of water. Not a mirage. Not imagined. Real. Somewhere ahead is a well, the last major one before the northern stations, where travelers can restock, repair, and sometimes just sit in silence. When you reach it, it's surrounded by stones painted with old trade symbols, spirals, suns, a crude map carved in reddish chalk. The well is deep but not dry. You draw a bucket and sip slowly. It tastes like stone and memory. You kneel and splash your face. Around you, others are doing the same. Some pray, some just stare into the ripples. You don't talk much that night. At camp, the fire is smaller, the song softer. Someone plays a flute tune you heard back in Kumbi Saleh. Slower now, a lullaby instead of a celebration. You lie on your mat with your arms folded behind your head, staring up at a sky that no longer feels foreign. Stars you couldn't name weeks ago now feel like old friends. You know where they'll be, how they'll move, when they'll vanish. You think about the road behind you, the sweat, the sand, the salt, the gold, the king, the coins, the cracked shell in your pocket. You think about what's ahead, Sigil Masa, maybe, the Mediterranean beyond, a return to the sea or another path inland. The road never really ends. It just bends, and now you know how to walk it. Your eyes close as Sheila lets out a sigh behind you, loud enough to rustle your blanket. And in that moment, your body aches in the best way. The kind that says you did it, you lived it. Not just a story, the history. The land begins to change again. Bit by bit, the dunes flatten. The scrub grows thicker. Small trees appear, stubbornly surviving. Where weeks ago there was nothing but dust and the occasional judgmental lizard. You feel it before you see it. You're approaching the edge of the desert, the northern border of Ghana's golden domain, and with it comes a strange feeling in your bones, not quite relief, not quite nostalgia, just weight. Like everything you've seen, carried, and felt is suddenly settling inside you. Today, your legs ache differently, not with exhaustion, but with anticipation. It's the final stretch, and it feels final. The caravan moves steadily, slower than usual, as if everyone's dragging out the last pages of a story they're not ready to finish. You pass familiar landmarks now, a split baobab tree with initials scratched into its bark, a stone slab where travelers leave offerings, a feather here, a bead there, one wilted onion, sentimental or just forgotten, unclear. You and Sheila have developed a truce. She no longer tries to throw you off with sudden sidesteps, and you've stopped muttering curses about camel stew under your breath. You even catch yourself talking to her sometimes, asking if she's tired, telling her you're proud. She responds with grunts and side eyes. You think she means same. Around midday, the caravan stops for lunch beneath a rare thicket of trees. Everyone spreads out, eating quietly, watching the horizon. The gold is unpacked for final inspection. Still sealed, still untouched. You help count it out, pouch by pouch, each one a small sun wrapped in leather. It's hard not to feel something. Not pride, exactly. Something quieter, like you've been entrusted with a secret and you kept it safe. You catch yourself brushing sand from your robe the way the Ghanaian guards did, precise and almost ritualistic. You've picked up habits you didn't even notice. That thought alone feels heavier than your pack. You share roasted yams with a Songhai trader who once rode all the way to Cyrenaica and back. He shows you a scar on his leg shaped like a crescent. Camel bite, he says. I deserved it. You laugh. You don't ask for details. Historians still debate the size of Ghana's true northern influence, whether it extended into Sigil Masa's markets or stopped shy of the Atlas foothills. You wonder if borders ever really mattered here. The gold passed through. The stories passed further. As you remount, someone calls from behind. A teenage boy runs up, arms flailing. You recognize him, one of the younger traders who got sick the second night out and stayed behind. Now he's returned, carrying a leather pouch tied in twine. For you, he says breathlessly. You open it. Inside, a carved bead, a strip of indigo cloth, and a single cowrie shell with a crack down the middle. From Kumbi Saleh, he adds, for the road ahead. You try to hand it back. He shakes his head. You'll need it more. You stow the pouch in your satchel, unsure what to say. Some gifts aren't meant to be explained. As the afternoon wears on, the wind carries something new. The scent of water. Not a mirage. Not imagined. Real. Somewhere ahead is a well. The last major one before the northern stations, where travelers can restock, repair, and sometimes just sit in silence. When you reach it, it's surrounded by stones painted with old trade symbols, spirals, suns, a crude map carved in reddish chalk. The well is deep but not dry. You draw a bucket and sip slowly. It tastes like stone and memory. You kneel and splash your face. Around you, others are doing the same. Some pray, some just stare into the ripples. You don't talk much that night. At camp, the fire is smaller, the song softer. Someone plays a flute tune you heard back in Kumbi Saleh. Slower now, a lullaby instead of a celebration. You lie on your mat with your arms folded behind your head, staring up at a sky that no longer feels foreign. Stars you couldn't name weeks ago now feel like old friends. You know where they'll be, how they'll move, when they'll vanish. You think about the road behind you, the sweat, the sand, the salt, the gold, the king, the coins, the cracked shell in your pocket. You think about what's ahead, Sigil Masa, maybe, the Mediterranean beyond, a return to the sea or another path inland. The road never really ends. It just bends, and now you know how to walk it. Your eyes close as Sheila lets out a sigh behind you, loud enough to rustle your blanket. And in that moment, your body aches in the best way. The kind that says you did it, you lived it. Not just a story, the history. So now as we settle in for the last few moments of tonight's journey, let yourself feel the road finally soften beneath your feet. The desert is behind you. The echoes of The rustle of trade pouches, the steady hum of camel steps, they begin to fade, gently like the last notes of a familiar song. Your limbs are heavy now in that good grounded way, not tired anymore, just relaxed. Your muscles remembering the rhythm of travel, the patience of long silences under wide skies. You remember the voices, the Berber gossipers, the quiet guards, the woman who told you the king's dogs could smell lies, the way laughter sounded different in every camp, how even gold had its own hush. And now you lie there, not on sand or straw mats, but in your own bed, warm, still. The hum of modern life perhaps floating faintly in the background. The stars from Ghana's night sky may be out of view, but in your mind they still shimmer. Slow. Software. Steady. And you, traveler of old roads, guardian of golden stories, can finally let go of the saddle, the sand, the dust in your eyelashes. Let it all fall away. There's nowhere else to walk tonight, nothing else to carry. You've done enough. You are enough. Sleep now, with the peace of a journey well traveled, and let the golden silence carry you all the way through.